Oh, yes, we are live. All right, we are live. Okay. Well, welcome to those of you that are tuning in and joining us on this last minute show that we have been able to organize. First of all, I'm extremely grateful to Professor Madut, to Madam Suzanne Jambo, and to my brother Awolich. All of these are people that are familiar to many South Sudanese, so there really will be no need for me to introduce them. These are people that have been at the forefront of public affairs of South Sudan. Suzanne, as you know, was SPLM Secretary for External Affairs, and since leaving from the SPLM, she has established a political party called the STEPS. Professor Madut is a professor at Syracuse University, Maxwell School. He has also been an undersecretary in the government of South Sudan, and he has held so many different roles. He has been a scholar. He has written many books on issues facing South Sudan, Africa, and the world. And Awolich, as you know, was the managing director for Sud Institute for a very long time. And he was the deputy chair of the Secretariat of the National Dialogue, among many other roles that he has held. Currently, as you all know, he's the one of the leaders of the PCCA, People's Coalition for Civil Action. I'm really honored that these distinguished individuals were able to come together at the last minute so that we could analyze the speech of the president. So without going further, I'm going to ask each one of you maybe to give a minute to greet the people of South Sudan who are now tuning in to this live broadcast. But let me mention to those who are watching us live, please share the video as widely as possible. Share it with all our people. So let's start with you, Professor Juk.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you so much, Peter. And thanks, Susan and Abraham, for coming on this live discussion to try to look into and break down the speech that our president gave today at the 78th General Assembly of the United Nations. Three things that I wanted to say. One is that our president came to New York after having absented himself from these meetings for almost a decade, for over a decade, and instead sending people to represent him. So we were all looking forward to the first time in 10 years that our president is representing us at the UN General Assembly meeting. We're looking forward to things that he was going to speak of on a national stage that we thought would be things that are good and useful to us back home in South Sudan. So that was, we were all inspired and looking forward to this speech on a world stage. Unfortunately, in my view, our president missed the mark by a long shot because it seems to me the president was not speaking from his heart. He was speaking from a script that was prepared for him by others. And what that means is that he ended up talking about things that when anyone watching him would see that these things the president didn't even understand what he was talking about, let alone being even able to embark on these things. He talked about primary health care, he talked about education budget, he talked about renewable energy, and all these things that we, those of us who live in South Sudan, know are not anywhere to be seen. And instead, focusing on things that are in the mind, in the forefront, in the frontal lobe of every South Sudanese, I think the president has been misled to speak of things that are almost irrelevant to us. In my perspective, I think he would have talked about the elections that he has been talking to us about, that the election will be held in December 2024. We needed him to tell the world how he is preparing for these elections, but he didn't. We would have wished for him to speak on some basic reforms that he could be speaking of. Last week, a leader of a major political party, Dr. Lama Kol, came to Juba and he was going to be honored by his comrades in a function, but this function was disrupted by national security. We thought that president would, buy some mileage by saying that that was the wrong thing for his people to do. The president also could have spoken on this new elections bill that was passed in the National Assembly in Juba, with a clause that says 5% of the members of the parliament will be appointed by the president. I think the president could have spoken by saying, no, I'm going to send that bill back to the parliament because I think this is very undemocratic. Let us not do that. The president had an opportunity to make South Sudan shine for the first time since 2013. Because since 2013, our country has been reported in global media on all the negative things. This was the opportunity for our president, who has been unable or unwilling to come to the General Assembly meeting for 10 years, to finally say, now I'm here. Here is what my country should look like on a global stage. He could have talked about major reforms or small reforms that are he's undertaking in his country, like widening the political space, freeing up the media space, freeing political detainees, and all of that, so that the world sees him trying to manage this new country which is beset by a lot of trouble. Like the way the leader of Timor-Leste spoke just before him. Timor-Leste is a country that has similar historical background as ourselves, and President Kiir should have gone up on the stage and say to the world that we are new, we have a difficult history, we are facing serious challenges, but we are trying our best. Please support us in this and this and this 4 or 5, 10 areas of governance that are a problem facing him, facing his leadership, his administration. Please tell the world what you have done. Tell the world what challenges you and what you are unable to do on your own. Tell the world where you want them to help you. But don't sit there and tell us about things that we all know are not really the issues that our citizens are thinking of. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Let's just take a short time because, you raise a very good point, Professor, especially looking at the content of the speech. We are going to come to that in a little bit because we actually have the recording of his speech, and maybe some of the South Sudanese people missed it. So what we are going to do once we do the round of the introduction, we will actually play the speech, and so that we can really analyze it deeply. Yeah. So my sister, Suzanne, you are highly welcome.
Thank you. I very much echo the similar sentiments as said by my brother Jock a few minutes ago. Basically, Kiir has come with one-way approach. Here's my empty bag, I need some dollars. He has not illustrated since his absence of 11 years from the international arena, when the General Assembly graciously gave us declared the independence of South Sudan and welcomed South Sudan as the newest member in the United Nations. So he has not come back with an explanation or illustration of how much success he has achieved in the country. Instead, he came with a shopping list. He came with, I need this, I need that, I need that. And the very United Nations platform that he was speaking at is the very United Nations, under the Secretary General Antonio, has all the reports, statistics, and facts about South Sudan. So, I mean, the audacity and the shamefulness to come in front of such an important platform and not say the truth as it is. For example, he talks very specific about certain things. He talks about South Sudan SDGs, the 7 points, and he talks specifically, for example, about education and health, where we know mortality rates in South Sudan is probably one of the highest in the world, where children are dying, at least about a certain percentage, 58% or 60% of every 1,000 child is born, they die. So almost over 50% of the birth that happens, let alone the mothers, who are close to 800 per 1,000 mothers giving birth. So basically, it's one of the highest in the world. And of course, there are root causes of that because of the war. So he doesn't talk about the war. He doesn't talk about the war and its impact on the people of South Sudan. Even when he touches on health again, he doesn't talk about malaria, which is still a #1 killer. What are the efforts he's making to stop the death of our people from malaria, something that many nations are increasingly overcoming? So that's one aspect, the health. Even when you come to education, he talks about the enrollment of 2.3 million children since 11 years ago, since South Sudan was born. But he doesn't tell us the truth. This 12.3 million, who are the players, the actors in ensuring such a statistics? I call us South Sudanese, we're statistics, sadly, we're not a population, because it is the United Nations, it's UNICEF. It's an embarrassment as a country, as South Sudan, that we rely heavily on external humanitarian support to put our children in school. But at the same token, out of every 5 children, there is at least 3 South Sudanese children who are out of school. This is the reality in South Sudan. Basically, it's over 50% of the population of kids who are out of school. So he's talking about statistics, but he is not giving it in relation to the situation, in addition to the fact that it is not his government's effort. It is really the international community effort. So he's coming to the United Nations telling them, thank you very much for taking care of my people. I've only been a president whose profile picture is on the walls. This is really, in other words, to be honest. And of course, then he doesn't talk about elections. For me, I was waiting to hear that. He shoved it. He very likely, after he started talking about all sorts of rhetorics. Primarily, he talks of in economic reforms. Which reforms is he talking about? He talks about the recent conference in Juba, which is done by not a government entity. So how do you, make glorious statements about someone else's achievements or someone else undertaking statement? So it does, because the essence, if you talk about economic reforms, you really talk about the government, because you don't talk of economic reforms as in terms of aspirations or some conference resolutions, but you talk about what have you done in as far as, for example, corruption, in as far as revenue generation, what are you doing in diversification of the economy? Because South Sudan is 98 or 90 over 90% reliant on oil, which is the prices are fluctuating and all that. But then even when you look at, when he talks about the climate, he copy pastes from what he just attended in Kenya, the conference on climate change. I mean, seriously, he tries to pin the world community by telling them, that you have to respect or honor your pledges of emission rates and all that. But what is he doing? We know all about the oil exploration in Unity State and the bizarreness of the the environmental degradation in there. What has his government done in place in as far as curbing that? So you want to come here and tell the world community you're not doing your part, and give me money so that I do my part. That's basically, in essence, when he talks about the climate change and the copy paste rhetorics that he was struggling even to read. By the way, he was really struggling to read that. And then of course he never ever talk. He tries to talk about security arrangement, but in light of something else, conditioned to something else. Where he talks about the arms embargo, he pleads the United Nations, the world community, please lift up the embargoes and all that, because it's affecting why I am not able to deliver peace to South Sudanese. This is what he's saying. Can you explain to us what has that got to do with bringing peace, restoring peace, and political will to implement the security arrangement? Because what does it mean to say that arms embargo is the one causing the lack of the political will and the government will to amalgamate or to go ahead with finalizing the security arrangements part and so forth? So basically, and then he also again capitalizes on the Sudan humanitarian crisis, for crying out loud. I mean, really, so not only he's begging on behalf of the people of South Sudan, but he is also saying to the world community, because that's also topical. The climate change is topical. He can get some money out of it. And he doesn't care about, he has not provided the education and health services to the people of South Sudan. But also he says, oh, the influx of refugees from Sudan is causing so much problems in South Sudan in terms of the economy. So he needs support there. He needs more support. So basically it's another tap for him to tap on to try and get something out of it. Basically, to me, in summary, really, the speech lacks total achievements, zero achievements. What have you done as a government? He doesn't say. Typical of President Kiir, never taking responsibility for the actions or inactions, not even admitting failures. Because sincerity, really, at the end of the day, if you're so desperate and you so need cash, at least admit some failures. At least say, well, you know, I am sorry, we didn't do this part because I've been absent for 11 years from the United Nations General Assembly. And since you gave us a beautiful accreditation and everything, and here we are, I'm sorry, some things happened. He does not even mention about the tragic war that happened in 2013 and counting. He doesn't even mention that. So, and in general, really, the speech was, for me, lacking coherence, as in it was difficult. He was jumping. So, like issues of the elections, like I said, and security and economic reforms, he jumps between issues that are not quite in connected, and then he just comes to it very quickly. You can tell that is either because he is so incoherent as a person, or of course, it is because it's an non-authentic document. It's not a document that bears any truthfulness or any genuine desire to do something good for our people in South Sudan. I will go more in specific later. Maybe my other colleagues will continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Suzanne. We will get into all of that. But thank you. You raised some very good points. We'll come back to them specifically to delve deeper. Let me welcome my brother Abraham Awolich. Comrade Awolich, you are welcome.
Thank you very much. And just following your instructions, I will not get into the speech. I just want to thank you for providing this space for us to comment on the current affairs in the country, especially the president's return to the UN General Assembly after 10 years of absence. I thank Professor Ajak and Honorable Suzanne Jambo for their comments. I will reserve my comments on the speech until you open it up for discussion. Thank you very much. And I want to appreciate the listeners, people who have, so that we can enlighten each other. Thank you very much. Peter,
sorry, I muted myself. So, okay, so what I'm going to do would be to play the speech. But let me first find it. I thought I had set it up before, but apparently it is not here. So let me look for it. But maybe I should also give like a bit of a briefing, but just a second, let me see if I can open it up. I think we put it somewhere on YouTube so that it can be available for people to see. So just a second, and I should be able to play it shortly. Okay. Okay, just a second. Screen. Okay. Okay.
Your Excellency, Dennis Francis, President of the 78th session of the UN General Assembly. Your Excellency, Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. Your Majesties, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, before my remarks, I would like to express my heartfelt condolences to the people of the Kingdom of Morocco and the Republic of Libya who have lost their loved ones in the recent natural calamities. South Sudan stands in solidarity with them during this difficult moment in their respective countries. Excellencies, on behalf of the people and government of the Republic of South Sudan, I stand before you today to reaffirm our commitment to world peace and security. We are committed to global efforts
There was a period where I muted it by accident, but we are not missing much. So I had muted by accident, but it should be back now.
our shared aspirations. Within this context, we are hopeful that together we can rebuild trust among member states and reignite global solidarity on the basis of sovereign equality of all states as enshrined in the founding charter of this esteemed organization. Excellencies, we recognize the urgency of challenges before us. We are also aware of concerted action required to address these challenges in order to ensure a better future for the coming generations. To this effect, South Sudan has developed sustainable development goals rescue plan with the focus on 7 SDG targets. This plan provides a roadmap of a better future for our people. And given that education is the key that will allow us to achieve our SDGs rapidly, I am pleased to report that South Sudan has made some progress in its education sector. Since our independence in 2011, our constitution, for example, guarantees all children free access to education. We have also designated education as a human right of every child. In February this year, I directed the Ministry of Education to implement pre-primary and secondary education policy across the country. This policy has directly led to enrollment of 2.3 million children in our schools. To ensure that girls stay in schools, we have banned child marriages through an act of parliament. More importantly, we have increased education budget with the goal of paying teachers a living wage. In the health sector, we plan to dedicate resources towards providing affordable and standard health care. And this will be done through primary healthcare approach that is inclusive and cost-effective. Excellencies, on climate change, South Sudan is dedicated to addressing its adverse impact. We plan to prioritize sustainable and use sustainable land use, promote renewable energy, and collaborate with international partners to reduce carbon emissions and protect our environment for generations to come. While working on this, it is only fair for us to call upon developed countries to cut their emission by 45% and honor their pledges of availing funds for mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage to the developing countries. With the recently concluded Africa Climate Summit held in Nairobi, Kenya, it is high time that the declaration of the summit forms the new crisis for rebuilding trust and regaining global solidarity for attaining the 2030 agenda. Excellencies, we acknowledge the political, humanitarian, and security challenges we have faced as a country since 2013. However, we have turned the corner with the signing of the revitalized peace agreement in 2018. Now we are determined to build on the commitments of our revised national development strategy 2021-2024 to consolidate peace and stabilize the economy. Ongoing public financial management reforms and recently concluded National Economic Conference from solid basis for sound management of public resources for the benefit of our citizens. What remains now is to fast track the implementation of the remaining provisions in the agreement in order to conclude the transitional period peacefully through fair, transparent, and credible elections in 2024. We have also managed to engage in dialogue and consultation with the various stakeholders, including civil society, women, youth, traditional leaders, and opposition groups to ensure that our peace process is owned and driven by our own people. As we move in this direction, we call upon the United Nations to lift the arms embargo imposed on us to aid peace implementation and to secure the elections. The arms embargo has impeded the implementation of security arrangements because effective deployment of the unified forces, which we have graduated, cannot happen without arms. Excellencies, As the country sharing the border with the Republic of South Sudan, South Sudan has received thousands of Sudanese refugees and our returnees since the conflict broke out in the Sudan in April 2023. This influx has overwhelmed our border communities and created a humanitarian crisis. I'm appealing to the international community to avail resources to help refugees and displaced persons who crossed into South Sudan. While the world is dealing with a multiple crises, we call for a provision of sustained support to these displaced persons as we work on how to restore peace and stability in Sudan. In closing, South Sudan stands before this esteemed assembly as a resolute partner in the collective pursuit of a better future for all. I extend our hand of friendship to fellow member states, international organizations, and civil society. Thank you very much and for your kind attention to these new remarks. Thank you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the
All right, there you have it. This is the speech of our president that he delivered a few hours ago on the front of the UN General Assembly. For those who are joining us late, I am joined in this conversation by three distinguished individuals that are very familiar to many South Sudanese. We have with us Honorable Suzanne Jambo, who is familiar to many of you. We have also Professor Madut, who is also very familiar to many of you. And we have my brother Awolich. For those who are joining us late, we started a bit earlier, just with a bit of introduction. But we wanted to play the actual speech so that South Sudanese people who have not had a chance to actually see the speech are able to watch it, so that later on when we make references to the things that the president said, you know very well exactly what he has said. That is why we recorded the speech and made it available as we do our analysis. We started earlier with a bit of analysis. I think right now is appropriate for me to first go to my brother Awolich, who did not have a chance to say much earlier. So my brother Abraham, I know you have difficulties with your network and whatnot, but I want to give you a chance to come for analysis of this speech. Now that we have heard it 2 or 3 or 4 times, we like to listen to your take on it. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Brother Peter. I am not in an office space, so I will. So my video might not be as clear as it needs to be, but I want to say that I listened to the speech of the president live when he was giving his statement, and I was ashamed listening to it And I'm in agreement with my sister Suzanne, who earlier that the speech was not authentic, it was not genuine, and the president basically rumbled. He struggled to make his statement, and I also agree that I was expecting a very clear agenda from the president, given the number of years that the country been in war, over 10 years now, and his absence from the UN Security Council and the UN General Assembly. I thought that he was coming to sell a turnaround, that South Sudan is turning things around, and now he has a new robust policy to consolidate peace. I was also expecting that he was going to present a very clear and thorough agenda for the election, a step-by-step process, and where he is doing, where his efforts are, and where the international community might be needed to support the process of the election. The president basically made reference to the election in one sentence, in few words. He was mentioning this in the context of him wanting the arms embargo to be lifted and wanting the arms so that he can graduate the unified forces, claiming that the reason the peace agreement has not been implemented is because of the arms embargo. I thought that the mission of the president has failed spectacularly in this round of the UN because the president has failed to present a coherent agenda that the world needs to rally around. And I think the reason I listened to the president is because I wish him success. I want him to be successful. I want him to get South Sudan out of the crisis. But I was extremely disappointed. I graded the speech of the president both in the delivery and the content. I gave it an F because it was poorly delivered and it was poorly constructed. There was no coherent agenda. It was just a list of things that he needed to say, but it didn't come in a form of a well-reasoned sway the world towards supporting South Sudan. And so the president fell short in selling anything at all. I also want to highlight the fact that there was nothing about the speech. The president basically mentioned things that are not, there was no substance. But even in areas where he cited specific facts, like 2.3 million people, he cannot say he initiated a policy in February this year and already results in 2.3 people having been enrolled in his school. That one was factually inaccurate, and the evidence on the ground doesn't show that there is any free education in South Sudan. I would take an example, village, where I actually I run a local community school. It was created by the government, but then there was no classes, there were nothing. So I took over. Basically, I've been paying teachers since 2014 up to today. I've been paying teachers in my own village from my own pocket so that children could be taught. And so I'm wondering, where is this free primary education that President Salva Kiir is talking about? And where is this livable wage that he's talking about for the teachers? Actually, the teachers in my village get paid 200 pounds. That is their salary coming from the government. And we know that 200 pounds buy you a cup of tea now in South Sudan. And so I really think that the president took a lot of time to focus on education, claiming that the country has made significant progress in there. And there was no evidence of truth in it. And I was very disappointed by that. The president should say thank you to the world for having supported education in South Sudan. We have not been able to provide support to education. He claimed that they have increased the budget for education and health, but the evidence doesn't show that. The money, yes, may be allocated, but doesn't get delivered at the end of it. Every year when they make a return budget report, it always indicates that education got only 1% of their original budget. So let me stop there. I think that I am extremely disappointed, and that our country cannot generate a coherent agenda that could be sold to the world in light of the crisis facing our citizens. That was a major diplomatic failure, and I'm disappointed, and I wish, I really don't know where hope could be generated for the people of South Sudan, because we thought this was a moment to tell the people that there is hope, that there is change, that the president has come up with some new robust dating peace, only to show up in a manner that is far below presidential. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Abraham. But let me follow up with you on a few issues that you raised. You know, it's very good that you mentioned the point that the president mentioned on the election. That was just like a passing line. He said, by the way, this is peace agreement we are implementing that is going to end in the peaceful conduct of election. That was the only time that there was the mention of the election. And as you correctly put it, it was in reference to the arm embargo being lifted so that the forces could be armed, as he kept on arguing all this time that they don't have arms and that they graduated these people with stick. But the fact that that was all he could say, there's nothing that he talked about the support that he actually required for the elections to be conducted. He didn't ask for money. The only place where he asked for money was for the refugees, for the Sudanese refugees that are coming. But he didn't ask for support, technical support. And you know very well, since we got our independence, we have never held election. So this is a new area for us where we will need all kinds of support from our neighbors and from the rest of the world. Why do you think that the president did not focus on election? What does it say about the intention to actually conduct elections in 2024? Was that like a realization on his own that no one believes that he's serious about elections, and therefore he probably just decided not to spend too much time and actually reveal his real agenda, which is to arm his forces?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. I think he's not sincere about the election, and he probably feared the fact that it could be taken serious, and that he's going to be held to a certain standard of having to conduct that election in a manner that is consistent with the international best practices. And so he just decided that this is a bluff that is good for the people of South Sudan, but not for the world. And so this goes to prove a point that we have been making, that the president is not serious about this election. He really wants to use the peace agreement that to continue to extend his stay in power, continuing to claim that he has not been supported by the world with lifted to implement the peace agreement, and therefore he cannot have an election. And so this is telling enough. I thought that the whole thing in the envelope was about the election, only to be surprised that the president actually climate change and education and health than on the peace agreement, which is the main political map we have in the country, and on the election. Yeah, so really it goes to tell you where the priorities of the president are. And in fairness to him, it also goes to show that, of course, the speech, somebody prepared it for him. And the president doesn't have his own agency to say that, no, I care about these other things. So this speech does not contain the things that I want to talk about. And he's speaking from experience as somebody who has in the past drafted statements from the president. Sometimes he gives the feedback on his speech, sometimes he doesn't. And so speech drafter, you are very much to make up things as you go. And the president really doesn't buy into any of that. So, but he would just read whatever is given to him.
Well,
so
that
I
is
agree with Professor Joke when he mentioned earlier that he should have spoken from his heart. If I were him, I would just cover that. I would just turn that speech upside down and just speak from my mind and my heart about what I know is important to my country. Yeah, so the insincerity of the president's call for election has shown. And it has shown in a manner that he was not able to speak and present that as an agenda to the UN. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Abraham. Picking up on the point that Abraham asked, I'm going to come to you, Honorable Suzanne Jambo. You know very well the main issue that is facing South Sudan is the political crisis that our country faced. The fact that we have not had a legitimate government since our independence. We don't have a government that has ever been elected. This was the issue that actually led to the war in 2013, if you remember. It was in the preparation for the SPLM convention so that we may have elections. And when he came in 2014, he had promised then that he was going to end the war very quickly and that he was going to do the elections in 2015. And now he's coming back 9 years later on, no elections, no wars. And one of the things that also caught my attention that you mentioned was that the parliament passed a law that ended girls, like child marriage. When did that happen? And which part of the country is it being enforced? To you, madam.
One of the differences, the sharp differences I had with President Kiir, which led to our sharp fallout in 2015, was the very thing that you mentioned. He claims that when he came to the world community, he said, I will end this war swiftly. But instead, he went on ethnicizing the war and polarizing the country to the extent that we began hating one another as South Sudanese. And this became a major problem. So I pleaded with him that we need to have a people's base, peace, where people can speak to one another, where communities can talk and dialogue amongst one another. But he did not want that. He told me categorically he wants to solve that problem militarily. And this is why the situation continued to this day. And then on, he began pegging in a way to avoid the voices of the people to scrutinize him. What have you done for us since we became independent in 2011? He avoided elections deliberately all those years and creating wars and prolonging his stay through what I call peace agreements, because the peace agreements in South Sudan sadly have become the new elections in South Sudan, every time renewing the term of office of the president to become again president, to renew, to stay in power. So basically, and of course, always making sure he does not fulfill the peace agreement fully. He always leaves some room for more negotiation, for more prolonging. He's very smart at doing that. The one thing I can tell you, the president is a coward. He is not brave enough to face our people, the South Sudanese people, and tell them, what have I done for you, my people? Have I given you schools? Have I given you hospitals? Have I given you roads? Have I given you food? Have I even given you peace? When we came in South Sudan in 2005 as SPLM, as the liberating party, there was peace in South Sudan. Today, there is no peace at all whatsoever, worse than any other time in our history, be it Anyanya 1 or SPLM, SPLO, or SPLA war of 1983. So to date, we are more in war than ever before. So today I was expecting from President Kiir, because South Sudan, the world over, the news everywhere is always people are talking peace. Where is peace? Where is peace? I was expecting his message number one to be about peace. What was he going to tell the world? Here is what I have tried to bring peace. Here is where I have failed. Please help me. He has not mentioned, not even any of his main topics ever touched on peace as a major topic. He has not. He just tried to peg elements of peace agreement in certain other topics behind it, you know. The same way he also avoided to talk about elections. He did not talk about elections as a main topic, you know, because you know, we want to go through a democratic process in South Sudan. So we wish to have elections. We have availed conducive environment. There is freedom in the country. Political parties are free, activists are free. He was not able to speak because he knows no matter how much he can lie about that one, there is no way he's going to lie about those facts. And he was scared. Clearly to me, it was a very clear message that he did that. So in a nutshell, really, when you look at since the last time he addressed the General Assembly, and this is for the viewers who are watching now just now joined us, basically, the United Nations General Assembly was the official entity that accredited South Sudan to become the newest member of the United Nations, as well as the newest republic in the world. So here he should have come to them after being absent all those years. He has not been attending the UN General Assembly, as been said. He's been sending others on his behalf. Today, he should have been able to speak with them, my brothers and sisters of the world leaders who are here at the United Nations General Assembly. This is what we have achieved in South Sudan since we gained our independence. He could not say any of that. What he shamefully said, he claims to have achieved certain things, for example, in education and health, which we all know it is the United Nations and international NGOs. It is even shameful for me as a South Sudanese to have become a beggar. All of us have become a begging nation. He rendered us basically as a begging nation. And he comes and says, well, I have managed to enroll 2.3 million, as said my brother Abraham a few minutes ago. He's the lack of coherence, even on this specific one. He says 2.3 million, then he jumps into, I ordered the Minister for Education in February to do XYZ. So anyone reading that will think maybe the 2.3 million have gotten recruited since February 2023. But these are statistics which we know, which the United Nations he was talking in front, they have their facts, they are on the ground. They're the ones who are putting all these statistics because it's UNICEF and other organizations which are specialized in education that are providing this work. It's shameful that our government institutions, I mean, Kiir could have come and said, for example, since I became president or since we became independent, we have now new in universities such as XYZ. He doesn't even mention that. 12 years, 18 years in totality since the peace agreement, 12 years since independence, and we don't have a university. All we have is inherited ones, which we just refurbish some of the buildings and whatever, and all by grants, external grants as well, not by the government as well, shamefully. So teachers' salaries, they're in arrears. Teacher salaries recently, after so much, and I know this is part of his sham election tactics when he starts expediting the 400% increase of salaries, which we know they will do nothing. These increases, and I'm pretty certain they will not even include the arrears, you know, so they will do nothing. I mean, somebody is earning $5, $50 a month equivalent of an SSP. What can we do with that in South Sudan? As my brother Abraham said, the money, the little money is given is not even enough for a cup of tea. And this is shameful. And even if when you go to statistics, my brother, Peter, you asked me about the issue of the girl child and the ban in marriages. The problem is even in the constitution of South Sudan itself, it lacks coherence. And this some of the things some of us who have been fighting against for so long is that it talks about the rights of women, for example, CEDAW on all the international conventions incorporated there, well and good in the preamble, yeah. But when it comes to specifics, it talks about where it has an issue of customary law conflict and our constitution, then customary law takes priority. So basically, there are so many practices in our country that we know that do not favor the girl child, and policies or practices, let me say, thereby. And in some of us, even we go deeper, we say it's not even our practices, it's not even our tradition, because we did our fact finding. What we know is that the conflict, laws of conflict, because we have been having chronic wars in South Sudan, there has been so much by the men in uniform and things that are against even our traditions, the practices. Like, for example, when you see an old man who's 70 years old marrying a 12 or 11-year-old girl, this has never been in our culture. We know that all over South Sudan, people even would have shamed it, communities, but it is because of culture of conflict, culture of immorality that has come, and materialism in South Sudan, that, you know, it's all about price, it's all about money, it's all about that. But that said and done, what is the government, what is the judiciary doing to protect those young girls who are being married, and some of them are even abducted from refugee camps and taken away from schools so that they're married off by force to these old men? Nothing is done. The girl has no place to run to. There is no justice she can get. And that is the fact that remains in South Sudan, very sadly. So we can go on and on about all this, but to me, the shameful fact is the president comes in front of the world community, in front of the United Nations, and has the audacity, the lack of insincerity, the way he does with us in South Sudan. He thinks that the same thing with the UN. He comes and tells them we have achieved 2.3 million kids in school, blah, when they know that, when the United Nations itself as a system knows that they are the ones providing these things. He has not done that. It's like you borrow a jacket or a pajama of your friend or your brother, and then you go boasting around it in front of everybody saying, this is mine. And when everybody knows this is not yours, it is an embarrassment. Really, to be honest, this is an embarrassment after being absent of so many years. And then at the same time, he does not talk about peace. To us, this is a burning issue, how he should have illustrated by example and giving facts. How much has he tried to do to bring peace? Because peace is the most basic thing that we lack in South Sudan. He has not said anything. Even moving forward, he talks nothing about the elections. So basically, he leaves with that, with the audience and the United Nations General Assembly, with his speech, he leaves everybody in equal puzzlement and confusion. Like they don't know what just happened. What kind of speech is this? What did we just hear? We heard nothing. You know, and this is really, in a nutshell, to be very honest, and I'm very saddened by that, because we were all anticipating to see what the president was going to say new, but he has not said anything. He just lied in front of everybody. He made us all not only beggars, but also liars as people of South Sudan, because he represented us there. That's all I can say, but we can go into specific later. Thank you for that for now.
Thank you so much, Honorable Susan, for those very interesting insights. I want to follow up with you, though, but now on a slightly political discussion. As everybody knows, President has not been coming to the UN General Assembly for 10 years. And there was a lot of anticipation when he was coming, a lot of excitement, because we thought now that he's coming with a real agenda. There is something that we are going to hear. And this is all that we have had. And then on top of that, you have heard how he had reached out wanting to meet with President Biden. Then that was turned down by the State Department, and they offered for him to meet with Molly Fee. It seems, not yet confirmed, but it seemed that he then refused to meet with Molly Fee because he thinks that Molly Fee is too junior for him, and offered to have the foreign minister meet with Molly Fee. And then I think the American then turned down that meeting. So it seems even the bilateral meetings at this point are quite unclear whether they are going to happen or not. Given this is what we have had, I think the only other people that he has met the Secretary General of the UN. And from what I understand, that meeting didn't go very well because he wanted to ask for the arm embargo to be removed. He wanted to ask for this and that. And the UN has clear messages, especially for elections. And if you remember, last week before the General Assembly officially convened, the UN envoy in South Sudan, Nicholas Haysom, he was in New York and he briefed the UN Security Council. And this entire briefing focused on the implementation of the peace agreement and the upcoming election, which were the issues that Guterres apparently raised with President Kiir, challenging him on specific issues that are missing, that are not done, especially the lack of political space. You know very well what happened last Saturday when Lama Akol was being, there was a welcoming ceremony that was being organized by the Opposition Alliance for Dr. Lama Akol. That was unfortunately broken up by the National Security Service. You know very well also the National Election Act was passed with unconstitutional provision in it, giving the president the power to appoint 5%. All these issues, everybody in the UN was aware of them. So given all of this, and from what I hear, he's leaving tomorrow to go back to Juba. Was this worth it? Was the trip worth it? Was it worth it for him to come all the way if this was all that he was coming to do? I don't know. What do you think?
First of all, I heard a rumor that this trip cost about $5 million. Very expensive trip. As usual, the time when President Kiir travels, he travels with a big entourage and they get paid exorbitant amount of money. So I say this, even if he could have succeeded to have met with Ambassador Molly, who is the Assistant Secretary of State, the US Assistant Secretary of State, it would have been like the meetings they've had in Juba numerously, because she was the ambassador in Juba. So and of course, Kiir doesn't like her because she does not mince her words. She's a tough ambassador. She has her stance on certain things. So Kiir obviously then declined to have the meeting with her because it's like basically what she has been telling him in Juba all the time. So I don't want to get into that so much because it's semantics. I mean, of course, obviously, if Kiir had been requesting through the former acting Minister of Foreign Affairs, South Sudan acting Foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs, for a meeting with Biden, obviously Biden would want to meet. I mean, that's up to the U.S. government. So he could meet for whomsoever he wishes to meet. But for us, it's a snub. I mean, that from not only the president of the US, but also to the state secretary. He could not even meet that, and to the assistant secretary. So that's aside. The point, honestly speaking, for me, we are a young nation. It's not about whom we meet, but it's about what do we say when we meet? What are our intentions? So here, to me, I think he does not want to discuss the issue of elections specifically, because for one, two things. For one, he has a prime objective of that. He has a goal. The ultimate and only goal is to remain in power. So that's his goal. He doesn't care about the process. He doesn't care how much it entails, how much it takes. If it's up to him, he would wish to fast track everything and then the declaration of the winner, and that is him. So he doesn't want to elaborate on all of the processes in between. And that's where because if he would have spelled that out in front of the United Nations General Assembly and said, this is the technical assistance we need, this is what we need, this is what we need, or this is what we desire, it would have meant a commitment in front of the world community by him that I am committed to do this thing, so that when he goes back to South Sudan, then he will embark on cooperating. Because the UN, of course, the moment that Kiir would spell out the technical assistance that he would say at the political level, such as the United Nations General Assembly, then obviously they will follow up with him. They're waiting. They've sharpened their pens, their notepads, they're everything ready to hear that from him. And so he knows that he's always slippery. I mean, when it comes to non-committal, and that's his niche, that is his strongest trait, elusive, very vain and vague, and that's his style of leadership, basically, because you can never hear a sharp word, a clear message, a clear anything from President Kiir, sadly. So basically, because of the lack of commitment, he's not interested in any commitment. He doesn't want anybody to pin him down, that you say that the General Assembly, this. If you see that, that's the nature of the letter, the speech, you know. If you see at the speech, it doesn't say anything but give me. It doesn't say, what have I done? It doesn't say what I need in terms of helping me technically, but no, give me a fat check of millions of dollars and I will know what to do with it. This is really what it is. So there is no political will. There is no envisage. There's no vision for what is going to happen in the elections and all these things. And sadly, we have seen already, we have been saying this, I've said this from the get-go, let us boycott Kiir's sham elections for 2024 because we do not have the conducive environment whatsoever, zero in a prevalent environment for such thing. And before I could even, my ink could dry from the paper, we saw Dr. Lamakol arriving in Juba, wanting to meet with his supporters. They want to receive him well as their leader, and already the national security started obstructing this. This is just the beginning of it. Lamakol and other politicians and civil society have not even begun saying anything about what is the meaning of election, voters' rights, the definition, the vision of various political actors and all that. They have not even begun that. So can you imagine when those people begin to say all those things, God knows what will happen. So there it is, you know, there is no political will at all whatsoever for Kiir, for room, for multi-opinions, for democracy, for elections in the nature that is the spirit of the right of the voter to choose their leaders based on their informed decision. That is not there by Kiir, and he doesn't want to commit to it, basically. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Susan. Professor, I'm going to come to you now. You have had the speech. You initially began with a bit of analysis, but I want to take this focus on elections. I know you and we have been exchanging messages, talking about the need to really call the government on the so-called election and see if they are really serious about organizing it. So although we know that the environment is not conducive, we have been saying, okay, we may not have everything that we'd like to have, but okay, let's see what can we do. Given everything that you have had now today and everything that has happened this week, how do you feel about elections?
Well, yes, you're right. When we've talked about elections, possibility of elections, what it takes to hold elections, and what they could mean in our context where we don't have a constitution, we don't have a constituency demarcation, we don't have security, we don't have logistics, where we all know President Kiir calling for elections is simply to say, here, I have called for elections. But so in my perspective, I've always said, let us call his bluff. Let us say, okay, we accept, hold the elections. Even knowing all the problems and the risks entailed in that, even for the safety and security and stability of our country, that elections could disrupt all of that. Despite all of that, we say, let us call his bluff and say, let's call elections. Because if we say no elections, he would simply say, well, people have rejected my proposal to hold elections, so that gives me a blank check to extend the longevity of my government for another 5 years, 10 years, who knows? So let us not give him the comfort of extending his government. Let us say, okay, let's hold elections. But in doing so, let us also tell him the analysis we have. And our analysis is that holding elections in this kind of environment runs the risk of imploding the country. We run the risk of legitimizing him by saying he won the election. We will know he will win. The look of it already he had is this population census estimates from all the different states. That was a ploy to pre-rig elections, rig them before they even happen. We've seen the amassing of money in his house, which he's saving up for to rig the elections, pay people, buy votes, what have you. We already know that is happening. We also know that he's in control of the army. So if he wanted his army to go to every polling station and say, take that box and dump all the votes that are in that box into this box, he can do it. Nobody can stop him. So we know that these elections are a way for President Kiir to get himself the legitimacy to tell the world that I have won another round of elections. We don't know, we know that they are not elections, but let us call him on that so that we can document to the world that this man has no intention of transitioning our country into a democratic society. And so I think if President Kiir was genuinely interested in elections, this would have been the center of his speech at the UNGA, but it didn't. So that already tells us this man has no agenda coming to New York, that this man had no intention of telling the world what he's doing or what he needs the world to help him with. He could have simply just said, I have done this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 things, but I am not succeeding because of the circumstances in my country. I am new, I am broke, I am beset by rebels, whatever. Tell the world, what is it that is standing in your way in running a country that was born on a promise to the rest of the world that here is a new country. This is where we will finally prove and categorically that African nations can be born and they can be successful because we have the advantage of all the hindsight. Tell the world, why is it that you cannot run this country? A country born as a middle income country, a country born with euphoric population that is saying, okay, we've suffered for 200 years, but still we got our country. Now it is time for us to shine because we know what to do. We know what we want. We know what we have missed all these years. We know how to get it. Show us what is standing in your way for such a population which has been so supportive, a population that has spent 50 years in war, supporting fighters, paying for the costs of the struggle, now finally getting their way, getting their country. And yet, very quickly, within 1.5 years, not even 2 years, that country was very quickly fast-tracking down to the bottom on all the human development indices. What is the problem? This was the opportunity for our president to talk to the world and to talk to us, to say, okay, it's not me. It's all these people who keep poking me on the left, poking me on the right, poking me from the head, and help me, tell me what I should do. Honestly, just talk from your heart, please. Don't read a script which is given to you by a sycophant who just came to New York, 60-member delegation, senior ministers coming to New York with no agenda, with not even a booking for hotel rooms, thinking that they are mighty and they will just flaunt their dollars and they will get a hotel room in Manhattan during the week of the UN General Assembly. For God's sake, you've got to be kidding. Why do you even have a UN mission in New York City? Why do we have a South Sudan permanent mission to the United Nations? If you are not just going to make a phone call, send a list to your ambassador or your ambassadors in your diplomats in New York and tell them this is the delegation that is coming. Please make sure that they have rooms to sleep. No, they show up in New York, no room booking, They all want to sleep in the rooms next to the president. And the hotel is saying, first of all, you don't have a booking. Secondly, you only have cash and I need a credit card. You can't stay here. Go to New Jersey or Pennsylvania or what have you. What more embarrassment can this country endure? Seriously. Thank you.
No, that was shocking to hear, Professor, that they didn't book the hotels and that guys were looking to just check in with cash. Just unbelievable. It just raised all kinds of questions. And you have, in the office of the president, by the way, there are some very competent people. Professor Dr. Barnaba Mariar Benjamin, he has been a foreign minister twice. You know, he's someone who is very experienced. He has done a lot of work. He's familiar with these things. And then in New York, they have a very good ambassador, Akwe Bonamalwal. He's a very competent, able diplomat, you know. And he has good stuff, those of Cecilia and others that are there in New York. But what I don't get is like, what was it? Is it the guys in Juba that control this, or is it the president himself? You know, because after all, he's the one who has his agenda, right? And he asks, like, if these people are going to write his speech, I would imagine that he will call them around and say, all right, write their speech. Here are the core issues that I'm going to discuss. Because what the speechwriter does is not the content, is the language of how you can deliver it in the most persuasive way. But the content of the speech comes from the person who is writing the speech, which is in this case is President Kiir. He's the one who has been away, avoiding the UN for the last 9 years. And he's the one that has finally decided that this year, I'm going to go. And we all know, because the election is supposed to be next year. So everybody, the idea of election was in our head. But given that the election only appeared when he was asking for the arm embargo to be lifted. What, you know, the reason why I asked before, what does this mean for election? Is because you would expect that he will talk about support to the Electoral Commission, support for truth and reconciliation process to happen so that people are reconciled and they're united, talk about like civic education, maybe asking for some of these groups, European Union and others, to put in money so that South Sudanese people who have never voted in their lives, many of whom are illiterate, could be taught. Why do you think President did not talk about that? Like, I understand you want to rig the election, but even if you want to rig the election, you do it in a way that allow the people to think that there is at least a space. Like, why not be honest about that? So I want to follow you up on that. And then the second issue that I want you to look at, Professor, if this was the content of the speech, why did he want to meet with Biden? What was he going to tell Biden, given what we have heard now that he told to the UN?
Absolutely. I think on the last question, the president and his aides, people who are contributing to the message that he was supposed to deliver, were simply here for a show, just to go to the White House or wherever, meet the president and be on camera for popular consumption back home, that our president is meeting the president of the greatest country on earth. So as Madam Susan said earlier, the issue is not the meeting. The issue is what are you going to say at the meeting? And that message was not there. And I think what is happening with in regards to that is simply ignorance, lack of ability to think outside the box. And as you say, there are people who, in that office, Minister Marial, others in that office who really do know how diplomacy works, how messaging, national messaging works, but they are not being given the space to do it, because apart from all these big shots that you see on camera behind the president, there are gatekeepers who are invisible. And those invisible gatekeepers don't know anything about how to run a country, anything about how to engage on a global stage. So I think that is what is at play. With regards to the elections, I mean, if he was going to simply come and talk the way he did, why does he even have to bother to come here to speak like this? I think what is there is that the president himself is tired from the way I see him. He's a very smart human being, but he is not a decision maker. He's not a person who will stand his ground and say, here is what I want. If you are going to be giving a speech, what goes into the speech should be your message. The role of the speechwriter is simply to craft it in a way that makes it flow. But the gist of the message should come from the head of state. I mean, that's not a brainer. That somebody should have said, Mr. President, give me all the points that you want to make, and I will craft this into a coherent message. And then there is this issue of the president also not being capable of actually delivering. Physically, the president is incapable of actually reading a message in a way that will make people interested in listening. We all want to go underground as we see our president representing us on that stage and reading the message letter by letter. It's not even word by word. I mean, for God's sake, if you are a president that is so smart the way you are and you want to deliver message, please turn over just get rid of those documents and speak in Dinka and ask some of your eloquent aides to translate for you. All the heads of states from other countries speak in their native tongues. What is the problem? Speak in Dinka and hire somebody to translate for you. That would have been more coherent. I think the whole process, the whole embarrassing appearance of our country on that stage is a failure of thinking. Thank you. You're muted, Dr. Biar.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Thank you so much for those insights. I agree with you. You know, this speech today, when I was looking at it, you know, I was completely lost about what he was talking about. Like, what I in my head was that maybe the president didn't get a chance to even see what the speech was going to be until he was on that podium, because, you know, it has nothing to do at all with the core priorities that are facing the nation. And this raises another question. Like, he knows he's going to be on this body. Everybody is watching him. Even the Biden that probably refused to meet with him, there might have been some aides in the White House watching this speech so that they say, maybe this is what the president of South Sudan wanted to say, so that they hear what his message was. I don't think anyone can go away with anything. Obviously, I know that he's afraid of Molly. Suzanne is right. We know Molly. All of us have interacted with her. She's very straightforward. She's very tough. She doesn't mince her words. And I think the president was just basically afraid to meet with her and to be told what he needs to do and how he is not doing what he has promised to do. So I understand that he probably was afraid of that. But I want to come to you, Madam Susan, because we have lost Abraham Awolich. Where do we go from here? You know, this was the big stage where we were going to hear the outline and the roadmap toward the elections. Some of us, for example, have been calling for the United Nations to play a major role. And you recall earlier this year, the cabinet actually wrote a letter to the head of the UNMISS in Juba, asking for the UN to play some role and to support them. This was the stage that I was expecting to hear more of that, and also see like what can be done in terms of support to IDPs and refugees. How might they vote? Could they vote in their own, wherever they are, or would they be repatriated back home? None of that. So where do we go from here as a country? Like, now he's leaving tomorrow. He's coming back to Juba. This is it, you know? So where do we go from here?
There are 3 points that I would like to add in as far as your question. And moving forward. One is a reflection on what both of you have said about the issue of having vis-a-vis the actual speech that President Kiir delivered, vis-a-vis the various competent staff in various institutions at his office, Minister Benjamin Mariel, who is an ex-foreign minister, and other positions he held, and Ambassador in the United Nations.
Yeah, Akwe Bona.
Akwe, yeah, Akwe, there's the name. So there are a lot of issues in that. Not only that, where we are lucky and fortunate to have people based on competence and meritocracy there in position, the few ones who are there, they are not utilized. It expresses something that is quiet, and we need to speak about it. It expresses the lack of room of having to establish institutional kind of way in approaching matters. A global meeting such as the United Nations General Assembly has presidents and leaders from all over the world. It is the maximum presence of political leadership at any gathering in the world. So it is the most important singular event or something that collects people together. So obviously this is the time that our government should utilize maximum professionalism of whatever that we have. But it shows that these guys who are in positions are either not free to do what is meant to be done in the right way, or the lack of will at all whatsoever to establish and impress upon the world that we have a government and a nation in South Sudan. And this is really erroneous. This is a big, big problem, and it will take us another 50 years. We will still be telling this in our history books. I mark my word on this, because you cannot not disrespect our people so much to an extent that you do not even care to show to the world that we are able at least even to deliver a speech. This is bad, okay? This is one thing. So the lack of coherence, the lack of system, the lack of professionalism in the entire government of South Sudan was reflected in this speech today. Then the second element is the president himself. We have all said it here. We've known even incidences where presidents of the world, when they realize the speech doesn't go well with what the intention or the objectives that they have in their mind. For crying out loud, President Kiir has been in the liberation movement in the SPLM for many years, even in Anyanya 1. Okay, he's a veteran, like what's said by Professor Ajak when he said Kiir is a smart man. He's not a person without a head in his head. He has a brain in his head. So obviously he must have, when he decided, okay, after 11 years, I wake up, I'm going to attend the UNGA, the UN General Assembly meeting. Obviously, I have 1, 2, 3 points I want to emphasize as a leader of this country on behalf of South Sudan. So when he saw that speech, obviously, if he had that vision in his head, those plans, whatever agenda he has in his head, he would have at least said them off his head, at the back of his head, off his head, off whatever, beside, even if to pretend he was reading a speech, looking at the speech, but he could have been saying those agenda that he wanted to say. But, and this is where I question Kiir again. I say it is not an authentic speech that he delivered. He chose to tag along the speech, regardless of the, as I said, $5 million+ he spent on this mission, on this trip, regardless of the anticipation the world has had and the attention the world has had. This is our glorious moment. World was waiting on this moment. The world was waiting to hear on behalf of the 12 million or 11 million we are South Sudanese, wherever we are. But Kiir missed the point. And it's, to me, I will not question, without a doubt in me, Kiir deliberately missed the point. He did not want to say what exactly in his head, because the vision or the objectives he has for this mission in his head are not to the interest of the people of South Sudan. Because if it was, it would have flown automatically. You know, we all know when it is the truth, when you're telling your own story, the truth as it is, you don't even have to craft it. You don't even have to write it. You can say it orally. And I said by Professor Ajak, you can speak it in whichever language that you feel comfortable with. But the issue is that Kiir is eloquent in both English and Arabic. So Kiir could have even spoken in any of those languages off the cuff, you know, without having to have read the speech itself. He could have said, listen, my fellow leaders of the world here, I am here on behalf of the people of South Sudan and the Republic of South Sudan, the world's youngest nation. And these are the issues that we have, and these are the achievements I've made. But obviously, because he has nothing to say, and he does not want to commit himself to anything, so obviously he deliberately obliterates, he removes exactly what he does not want to say because he doesn't want to, because he's a smart man. His head is working. He has brain in his head. That's why he's still cunningly president in South Sudan up to now. Obviously, he knows how to survive amid so many situations. A speech like that should not have been an issue, but because he doesn't want to commit himself. The third element, what are we doing? This is the most important thing for us as South Sudanese. Some of us were in the camp, as said by Professor Ajak, and I know perhaps Dr. Peter and others have had the expressions about the elections. They probably were trying to trap Kiir or pin him down. Okay, you want elections? Okay, we go for elections. So let's see these elections, how they're going to be. But some of us, personally myself and others, totally against it, because we know, I mean, we've seen other nations, Uganda, for example. I mean, Museveni is president of Uganda, but we know all the facts lead to that Bobby Wine may have actually won the election. So basing on that, some of us were very skeptical. We are very skeptical. We know when a leader is insistent to stay in power, and for long he stay in power, he will only look for any means to legitimize his stay in power. So he will not allow any free, fair election, credible elections on the least bit. So, but I hope that the way forward from here is that we South Sudanese, especially the civil society, political activists generally, really must come with a unified voice. To me, I said no to Kiir. I peg my decision or my sentiments based on the National Dialogue resolutions of December 2020. In those resolutions, the National Dialogue, which to me to date represent the most unbiased platform, because it had representatives from the 10 states of South Sudan, laymen and women, normal people, who are not handpicked into parliament and paid and I don't know, medical allowance and all those kind of things so they can pass things and fast track all sorts of things. These are normal people like all of us, ordinary people in South Sudan suffering the lack of war or the lack of peace in our country. They resolved that there should be free, fair, credible elections, but Kiir and Riek must not stand in those elections. To me, I stand by that till the day I die, you know, that as long as Kiir is part of any election, there will be no credible, free or fair, least of all, elections in South Sudan. So this is I'm urging, I'm really saying this because the environment in South Sudan does not allow for that. Does not allow for any, because the essence, what is the essence of elections? The essence of elections is for us as citizens, empowered citizens who are informed, like said earlier on by Peter Biar, when he said about civic education, electorate education, when our people know policies, what kind of policies this candidate will stand for example, in as far as peace, security, and development, and all sorts of endeavors that we, the people of South Sudan, the reason why we rallied behind our Anyanya one first, and then now in SPLM, we all supported and gave our dear lives in terms of millions of South Sudanese, was for us to come from oppression from North Sudan, where we were discriminated against, a second-class citizen and so forth, so that we become free and equal in our new nation of South Sudan. These were our aspirations. But are we free? We are not. Are we equal? We are not, because only a few handful of people are benefiting from the country in South Sudan. But we, the millions of us, are statistics. 7.8 million, almost 8 million are facing hunger right now as we speak. And 2 million are internally displaced. About another 2 million are around East African nations, you know. So where are we? We are worse off than we have ever been. So to us, the prolonging of this is by giving Kiir the chance to go through elections, because it's like giving our consent, saying, okay, you become president until you die in that chair, until we die even before you. How many young people have died so far because of Kiir's presidency? How many young people who could have become brilliant citizens of South Sudan? 70% of our population, when Kiir talks about education and 2.3 million, 70% of our population are young people. And guess what? More than 80% of our young population are without schools, without colleges, without universities, without anything. So do we want a continuation of that anymore? It's my position is that we as South Sudanese, we need to find a way to learn to unify our voices. We must become united and focused, put the country first, not position, not money, not whatever whatever our individual aspirations are, but we must put the country first. We must unite our voices as South Sudanese, and we call for a technocrat government, a South Sudanese government, which is of us South Sudanese, of the people of South Sudan. That now this such a technocrat government. We have educated South Sudanese the world over. We have very good people who love South Sudan and will roll up their sleeves and do whatever it takes to bring peace into the country, to initiate dialogue between people and people of South Sudan, so that no more tribalism and no more ethnic animosity and hate between us. We want to go to where we were in 2005, when we gained our CPA, Comprehensive Peace Agreement, because every time we united the South Sudanese, we won. Every time we united the South Sudanese, we never called ourselves either you are Nuer, you are Dinka, you are Bari, or what. We never called ourselves those kind of languages. We won. The CPA, we won it because we were united the South Sudanese. In the referendum, we won because we were united the South Sudanese. I want us to unite, because there is no army, there is no national service security or whatever that will defeat a united people of South Sudan. 11, 12 million of us, we have one language, one voice, we're able. That way we can convince the world community. We can have a government of technocrat, we have specialized South Sudanese who can steer the country properly, and then can be mandated with a set of things, including the promulgation at the beginning of the dialogue of between people peace, people to people peace, the promulgation of a national constitution that is representative of our aspirations as South Sudanese people, that expresses our desires how to be governed as South Sudanese people, because we do not have a permanent constitution as yet. And of course, the room for efficacy or professionalism, systems that are functioning in the country, and of course, towards now free, fair, credible elections where we can choose our leaders. We are in an ICU unit. We are in an intensive care unit at the moment. There is no way we can have elections as we speak right now. We need humanitarian interjection, huge one, into South Sudan, but that will not happen. The world community has given so many billions and billions of dollars for South Sudan, which have gone into people's private pockets. They cannot trust this government at all whatsoever. That's a fact. Kiir knows. There is no way anybody is going to give him a single dollar right now. And he's just being selfish, victimizing us, the people of South Sudan, with him. People don't like him. We don't like him. He has never given us a room to choose him. So this is really, let us unite our voices. Everybody, every citizen in South Sudan, we have a role to play, that we can hold my brother who is a Dinka, who is a Moro, who is a Nuer, who is a Bari, who is a Pajulu, who is an Anuak, etc., to hold one another hands and speak the language of a people, you know, because we have to reclaim our power back as a people of South Sudan. And Kiir must be afraid of us, not the way we are right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I know Professor is rushing to go to class. Professor, you have been very generous with your time. We are grateful. The people of South Sudan are grateful for the insights that you have brought. I just want to give you some minutes to, first of all, reflect on the same thing. Now he's going back to Juba tomorrow. Where do we go from here? What does he go and tell his people? What do people do now as we talk about this election? And then what is the way forward? Do you see these elections happening? If not, then what is the way forward for the people of South Sudan?
Yes, thank you. I think our president and his delegation returned to South Sudan, bringing back nothing but a bruise on the face of our nation. He has been snubbed by the American authorities. He has failed to deliver at the UN General Assembly meetings. He has not even held any meetings with other leaders of the world who came. His delegation and his advisors and his aides did not actually look around themselves to see and ask the question, what is our going to New York going to bring for South Sudan? They could have asked, for example, why is China leaders staying away? Why is the British staying away? Sunak didn't come. Why are the French staying away from this meeting? It's because the UN General Assembly meeting is an opportunity for every member state of the United Nations to make a statement about where do they stand on global affairs. If you think that the UN General Assembly meeting does not contribute anything, you stay away from it. If it is going to advance your cause, you come prepared to deliver the message that will support your cause. We did nothing of that sort. And I think our president and his government were blindsided by this meeting because they did not prepare, they did not ask themselves, they did not even ask the question, what are we going to New York to do? So I think they go back as people who have failed. There is a phrase in Dinka that says, "Achila duk, kechila rojijum." For the benefit of Madam Suzanne, this is an expression that says something that never exists. There are these specialists who go around to neuter dogs. If you are a specialist who neuter dogs, normally you don't get paid. So you go neuter somebody's dog and you come back empty-handed. And I think, unfortunately, for us, for our country, for the image of our country, I think our leaders are going back to Juba with nothing. And I wonder what they are going to say to people on arrival. What they are going to say going forward is to say we are now on our own, we've been abandoned, except that they will not do it. Because if you are a people who have been abandoned by the world and you want to duke it out and you say, okay, we are now on our own, let us flex our muscles, let us do our own homekeeping, we would have done that long ago. In fact, that is what I would have recommended for President Kiir to have done instead of coming to New York. He would have said, listen, people, the whole world is thinking that we are bad people and that we are our own. They have reduced development aid long ago. They've taken it out. Even the humanitarian aid is dwindling. They have refused to meet us. Even the civil society in the global north is on our neck, trying to tighten the sanctions, the so-called smart sanctions, which in fact are sanctions that affect all of us. The whole world, if you are a genuine, honest person reading how the world is thinking of you, you would come back to your people and say, we've been rejected. And now, if we are going to survive, let us count on our own selves and our own resources, our own ideas, and start rebuilding those connections with your people. I hope President Kiir and his team are going back to South Sudan to say such a message. All I know is that they will not do it. And so for us, those of us who are watching, both inside our country, but also are privy to international ideas about us, we say the only thing that is going to help South Sudanese in the future is for us to unite and challenge the government of Salva Kiir either to quit right now, yesterday, or to accept, to dialogue and negotiate with us an exit strategy that will save their face, so that they can go home without any cloud hanging over them, and let the South Sudanese people try something new, new blood, something new, something, anything new, anything other than what we have seen for the last 20 years, please. And that cannot be achieved unless we South Sudanese shun the divisiveness, shun the ethnic chauvinism, and see each other as having, as one people on the basis that we are South Sudanese. Nothing matters, nothing else matters other than the fact that we belong to this entity called South Sudan. And if we unite and work together, despite all our differences, I think we can tell Salva Kiir and his team to go home. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. I'm going to give Suzanne maybe one last minute of any closing words that you have. And then, Professor, I will come to you also for any last minute. I also want you to reflect on some of the things that are happening this week inside the country. I know we have been focusing exclusively on the speech of the president, but we also know there's a lot that is happening in the background. We talk about the passage of the National Election Act, the dispersion of the gathering of the South Sudan Opposition Alliance by the National Security, the revelation by the deputy chairman of the SPLM-IO that Dr. Riek is officially under arrest and is not allowed to travel within the country or outside of the country. And then the atrocities that the military is committing in Pachala against the Anuak community, which was started by one of the commanders that assassinate the only Anuak person of a senior military rank in the army, a colonel. So as you close, I want you also to reflect a bit, where do we go? Because we are seeing the dogs of war again coming back. This situation now, we know that the Pibor, the Murle youth has been mobilized by the military and the national security, and they are now going to Peshala to attack. So we are back again to that kind of disaster. And you know, he's asking for arm embargo to be lifted when his forces are massacring civilians in Pachala. You know, so it's just weird, really extremely weird. It's a situation that I had never seen. Like, we are in a complete state of denial. The president doesn't want to touch anything. You know, we know failure is possible in human nature. And even many of us South Sudanese have been very generous with the president. We know that being the first president is never easy. None of us have ever done this before. He's the first one to do it. Obviously, there are mistakes. But even with all the mistakes, there is one thing that a person does. So instead, we heard today asking for arms. The military is massacring civilians. He's talking about public financial management reform. That almost made me laugh when I heard that, because we know that all the road contracts are being given to Bol Mill. Alena Yang was talking about this the other day in the Lake State media, decrying the fact that all the resources are awarded to this individual. And this is not money for Bol Mill, is what you were saying before, Professor, is the money that ended up coming back to his house in J1. We know that Bol Mill was the one that paid for the rally in Wow, and he is supposed to be using that money to build the roads, and he's not doing that. So as you close, you know, reflect again, you know, on all the things that are happening in the country. And think about, if you're a South Sudanese person that is watching this show in South Sudan, whether you are in Kwajok, whether you are in Torit, whether you are in Malakal, where do you get hope? Where do you get hope? Where do you get hope to believe that there is a better future ahead? Please, I hope you guys end on some hopeful note. I like what you said before, Suzanne, challenging each other about the need for all of us to work together. But, you know, given everything that we see in the country, you know, we see all these people that have come now to New York. They will go back with millions of dollars. This money now, maybe next week, you will see the exchange rate in the black market will drop, because all these guys will have extra money now that they want to exchange in the black market. Where is the hope for the majority of South Sudanese people? Let's start with you, Madam Susan.
Well, the hope lies in us. You know, hope doesn't die in a human being. As long as we are breathing in this world, we have hope, you know. So I throw back the ball to us, because we also take the responsibility For as long as Kiir is in power, with all the corruption that's going on, then we are the ones, we are the base, we are the ones pushing him to stay in power. So really the question is on us, the people of South Sudan. There is no army. We have seen revolutions. We have seen peaceful revolutions happen in Northern Africa, in Algeria and other places that have dismantled presidents who have stayed for life. We have seen it happen with Bashir, you know, we have seen it in our real time and everything. So the issue is that we as people, when we unite, we can. Before I get to this message, I just want to talk of this issue of ethnicization of our communities. So yeah, I mean, Kiir comes here in front of the United Nations and he speaks about lifting of the arms embargo. Yet on the ground, his army and state-sponsored militias, because where do they get the arms from? I mean, they're still continuing to kill our communities. They're inciting one another against each other. So how is that happening? I mean, there is no way that you can say lift the arms embargo when the country is filled with arms. So how much more arms? I mean, is arms now food? Is guns now food and water for us to drink and eat? Or what is more there to be brought into our country in terms of guns? So that I mean, I'm sure the United Nations and every person listening to that secretly laughed in their hearts, like, this man, how can he declare war on his people like that? I mean, he comes in front of us and tells us lift the arms embargo so I can kill now the remaining people of South Sudan with more guns, because there is more than enough guns in our country as it is. So the whole thing is bizarre, you know. So I want to just go back to the point that I'm very passionate about as a South Sudanese. I say that for as long as we turn against each other as people, as members of our nation, as citizens of our nation, as long as we continue to spread hate. I'm originally from Equatoria, and I know many of my brothers and sisters from Equatoria don't like the way I talk about unity of us, the people of South Sudan. That I should be talking against Dinka, I should be talking against Nuer. But I say time and again to people, I say, we as South Sudanese, we have lived together since time immemorial. Since before there was something called the Republic of South, way before the Republic of South Sudan, we could travel different parts of South Sudan by foot, by whatever means, by barge, by river, by boat, and no one has ever told us that, oh, you know, because you're nowhere, you cannot stay here, or you're Dinka Bor, or you're Dinka Baragazal, or whatever. We didn't have that kind of language among us. And this is us. This is us. This is the original us, the people of South Sudan, how we live together. I want us to always, no matter the temptations, to always remind us of that. Even during our wars, I didn't, of course, catch up with Anyanya one. I was not born. Even in SPLM, I caught up later on. And I tell you, I'm a witness. I traveled to the remotest part of whatever Baragazal, whatever part of Upper Nile, and in there, I was always received well. This is our sister. If I'm staying at that time when I was working for the United Nations, if I'm staying at the UN compound, my people will come and get me from inside. They say, no, come stay with us in our compound, in our own tukuls. And I would relocate from there to be with my people. So even though they are not Moro, they can be Dinka, they can be Nuer, they can be Anuak, they were not Moro, but they accepted me there. And all of us South Sudanese, if you have been an SPLA foot soldier, if you have been an SPLA in whatever capacity, or SPLM, or even an academia person, Brother Jock, we met in Rumbek in 2004. There was no such a language among us as people of South Sudan. To this day, I don't even know what section of South Sudan you are, and I don't care, you know, because you are my fellow patriot. You're doing your part in order to become the nation that we are supposed to be. So I'm appealing to us South Sudanese. We are the ones giving power to this kid. We are the ones giving power to his ruthlessness and all the militias and all that's going. We are the ones inciting. We are the ones responsible for it. We are. Because for as long as we tag along and we say, yeah, fight this community, fight this, call this community bad name, call this another, we are really committing gross mistakes. These are, I'm telling you, these are, you know, our ancestors, who live together peacefully side by side, their souls will not be happy. Those even of Father Saturnino, you know, the Anyanya one martyr, you know, he will not be happy in his grave if he hears us we talk like that. Let us, by all means, no matter the temptations. I'm ex-SPLM. I partly grew up within the ranks of SPLM. You know, I came very earlier on in my age at the time, and yeah, Dinka language was spoken all over. And I did one time say to Dr. John Garang, I said, Yaki, is Dinka language the official language of SPLM? Must I learn before I joined the SPLM? I said that in front of Mama Rebecca. She's a witness, and Denga Laura is a witness. They saw that I said that. And Dr. John looked down and he looked at me, said to me, all right, Suzanne, on this point. Late Samson Kwaji was present at that gathering when I said that. So we can say these things. You can express them. You can say, Yaki, domination is happening in this way and that way. Speak it out in a dialogue way. But don't shun your brother and sister, because we need each other to call ourselves a nation. We need each other to build that dream nation, and we can reset it. We, the people of South Sudan, we can reset it, and the world would be right there as they were with us in 2005, with all the goodwill and the support that they can give to our nation, so that we reset the clock and we begin where we had left there, because we deviated from that path. In 2005, everybody started seeing the dollars, the millions of dollars, the V8s and everything. It got into their head and they forgot our struggle, our history. We can reset it. We can go back to that, but power must come within us. Even if your brother Dinka Onwer said to you something bad as an Equatorian, even if your Dinka and Equatorian brother say to you something like this or that, Onwer said to you something, forgive him or her, for they do not know better. Forgive him or her, for they do not better. Try to explain your point of view as a fellow citizen of South Sudan, whichever part you are from, and say, no, my brother, this is not the language we can speak. Let us speak this way. Embrace one another. Believe me, that will bring the power back to us, the people of South Sudan. And like said by Professor Ajak, now we can dictate, and now we can say, Kiir, step aside, and Riak and all those people we're tired of. We can begin our nationhood building from then on. This is my message, and I'm particularly saying it to the young people. We are lucky as South Sudan that 70% of our population are young people. We can make the change. Youth have been known the world over of catalysts of change. And women were 65% of the population, are appealing to us, because the youth 70% is 50-50 women and men, young men and young women. But also women as a block itself, we are mothers, we are nurturers, we are carers, we love. We don't want to see our children being killed, our husbands being killed, our uncles and our fathers. Please, women, let us rise for this. Let us recall our God-given gift as mothers, as women, for Earth and for South Sudan specifically. That is all I can say. Thank you so much, brothers, for this initiative. And it was good being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those wise words, Comrade Susan Jambo. Professor.
Okay.
We now come to you. I know you have a time limit, but if you...
Yeah, and I have to run to class, but I just want to echo what Ms. Susan Jambo said by simply repeating a very well-known phrase that let us all be our brothers and sisters keepers. If we are not that, we don't have anything. She referenced all these ethnic identities and how they mean nothing really in the grand scheme of things if we are not protecting our country, which brings us all together. On what could be a source of hope for our country, there are several things. One is that even as things look so dire and so difficult, and people are not able to put food on the table, and kids are dying from preventable diseases, and women are dying in childbirth, we know there are citizens inside South Sudan who dedicate themselves every hour, every day to improving the situation in that country, despite the challenges that they face every day, despite they themselves being at risk of dying of hunger or of gunshots or disease. They dedicate themselves every waking hour of their lives to ensuring that our people are okay. Those are the source of hope. Because one thing that I always say to my students, to my comrades, to my friends and everybody, it always gets better. It has to get better, and it always does. So let us keep our eyes on the prize. The prize that is our togetherness, is our resilience, and it is those heroes and heroines who wake up every day to make life better for us. Yay to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for those wise words. And thank you, Madam Suzanne Jambo. Unfortunately, we lost Abraham Awolich in the middle due to poor connection. He sent his apologies, and hopefully next time he will be able to join us for the entire duration. Let me add my closing remarks too, by saying, first of all, we as those who have organized this show, we are very grateful to the people that have tuned in. We are asking all our colleagues who have had access to this video to share it as widely as possible so that people of South Sudan may benefit from it. But most importantly, I also want to echo the words of my sister, Susan Jambo. We, the people of South Sudan, we are the change that we are looking for in the world. There is no one else that is going to come anywhere from the world to fix things for us. We have to roll up our sleeves and do the hard work. And we know this from experience. There is nowhere in our entire history that other people have come to help us. Even when they help us while we are doing something. They don't come and initiate things for us. It is us we initiate, and we go and look for support. So we have to begin, as our sister has put it, to come together as people of South Sudan. We must never lose hope, because our country is a blessed country. It's a country that has been blessed by God Almighty. Not just because we have resources such as oil, gold, beautiful land, River Nile, our suit, but most importantly, we have the people of South Sudan. And the people of South Sudan, these are the most important resources that we have as a nation. And we have to invest in them, especially women and young people. These are the future of the country. These are the architects of tomorrow. So we as a people, we have to come together. We have to hope. We have to believe that there is a better future for South Sudan. Second, we have to take action. And we have to take action based on what we are capable of. Not all of us are capable of the same set of actions. There are people that are good at talking. We want those people to begin talking. There are people that are good at mobilization. We want those people to do the mobilization. This is a work that requires everybody. Whether you are a church leader, you are a priest, whether you are a teacher, you are a healthcare worker, whether you are in organized forces, even the members of the security forces, whether you are in the military or the National Security Service. This nation does not belong to a single individual. It belongs to all of us. And for us to rescue it, your contribution is needed. You as a citizen of South Sudan has a lot to contribute to the betterment of this country. So we ask you to think differently about where our nation is going. We have seen the speech that the president has given at the UN General Assembly, a speech that has left all of us confused and wondering about the direction where our country is going, a speech that did not state any of the priorities, any of the challenges that we face. The president of Timor-Leste that spoke before President Kiir acknowledged the issues of poverty, child poverty in his own country, asking for support of the international community so that they could be addressed. Today in our nation, there are so many families that are starving, that cannot put food on the table. There are families that are returning from Sudan who have lost everything and have to start life anew, and they have no support. Our government has only allocated $3 million to all these people, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. Yet for this trip of only 4 days, 5 million were spent. It's not even $1 million per day. This is like 1.25 million per day, just for the trip in which nothing was communicated and nothing was received. This is tragic. And if we continue to basically pretend that this is okay, and we use ethnicity, that this is our Dinka president, as many of our people have been saying, that he's a Dinka. Kiir is not a Dinka president. Kiir is a president of the Republic of South Sudan. He's responsible for every single South Sudanese person. And there is nothing that he's doing there that should make any one of us proud or any one of us feel safe or secure. Instead, he's basically making us a laughingstock of the world, coming to New York with no agenda to communicate, going to the front of General Assembly, talking about things that are not realistic, things that are being done by the goodwill of the international community. He should have begun by thanking the international community, primarily the United States, the United Kingdom, the European Unions, who are footing the bill for education and for health in our country, instead of claiming that he's the one that ordered all these things to be done. We know the teachers in our country have nothing to eat. We know the security forces have nothing to eat. They're struggling every single month now. We know even in the presidential guards, there is a person that commits suicide. And for the first time, we know now that the National Security Service have gone for a month without salaries. This is the situation we have all been reduced. And we cannot pretend that keeping him there is the show of loyalty. No, we have to be loyal to the nation, not to a single individual. So let us roll our sleeves. Let us come together and let us take action. Those of you that are capable of taking whatever action that you are capable of that will promote the well-being of the country, we encourage you to take it. The only thing that we don't encourage is violence, because we are sick of violence. But we encourage people of South Sudan to come together in peace. And we ask our security forces to be loyal to their own brothers and sisters, not to a single individual who have virtually misled the country for nearly 2 decades without a single achievement. So we are grateful that you are able to tune in, but as you could see, this country is on its own. It has no leadership, it has no vision, there is no program. So if we as people of South Sudan come together and begin acting immediately on how to rescue this country, this is the state of affairs that we are going to witness, but from now going forward. And this is something that none of us could be proud. Even my own Dinka people, there is no way we could be proud of this situation. And whether you want to regionalize it, there are people trying very hard regionalism. This is nothing to do with Equatorianism, Upper Nihilism, or Barghazalism. This is something to do with our lives, with our dignity, with the prosperity of our people, with the lives of our children and our women. And it's our responsibility as a people of South Sudan to act. How do we, people that are in a land that is blessed so richly by God Almighty, begging the world so that we are fed, so that we do not starve? It shows that all of us, there is a problem, and we have to rise up to address that problem. I hope that we will be able to solve this problem once and for all in 2024. May it be the year that the people of South Sudan come together and rally around the vision for which they liberated their country, to bring forth a nation that is feared far and wide, a nation that stands tall, a nation of people that are united in purpose, who are willing to forge a brighter future, not just only for the current generation, for generation to come. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for this conversation. And thank you to my guests, Honorable Susan Jambo, Dr. Madut, and my brother Abraham Awolich. Until next time, adieu. Thank you.